A special thanks to all the sponsors of the Myth Information Conference 3 in October. Author of the new book, Mythos Christos, Edwin Herbert, Atheist Republic, Godless Engineer, Kenosha Racine Area Freethinkers, Atheist Community of Milwaukee, Freedom from Religion Foundation, the Atheist Alliance of America, the Sophia Wolf Quadracci Memorial Fund for Stem Cell Research. And please remember that your purchase of a $300 sponsorship table for the event includes 1 ticket to the conference and 1 ticket to the VIP party, and also gets you mentions on all of our social media platforms as well as this podcast. And a very special shout out and thank you to all of our patrons who support the show. Welcome back live. Ladies and gentlemen, it's the MYTHICIST Milwaukee Show. I'm your host, Rob Moore, the Deacon of Doubt. With me, as always, Brian Edward, the Friar of Free Thought. What's going on today, Brian?
I am really excited to speak to our guest. This is a fantasy come true.
Are you ready to get your geek on?
Yeah, I've been ready.
It's funny. We have a crowd of about, 15, 16, 18, 20 people that come now, and it's just coincidence that the big Star Trek fans are you and I. And I wouldn't put us in the category of freak geeks. I don't go to the comic. I don't do that stuff. But I was a massive TNG fan. There's no doubt about it.
I've had my picture taken with Klingons, though.
Have you?
Yeah, I have. They were tall.
Nice. We actually work with some kids here that were not even born when Star Trek: The Next Generation went off the air in '94. And he was like, who are you talking to? We are, in fact, talking to...
I'm going to forget I heard that. But
Q himself. Welcome to the program, John Lancie. Thanks for joining us, John. You there?
You're welcome. You're welcome.
What's it like to be an actor? Tell us what it's like. I'm looking at your bio here, and it goes all the way back. It goes back so far, and I'm 52, so I'm a little older than most of you guys.
Data would take 20 seconds to read that.
He was on the $6 Million Man. You guys does anybody even remember that show?
Yeah.
He was on the $6 Million Man. What's it like to have lived a 40-year acting career, musician plus? You're a Renaissance man. Tell us a little bit about John Lancie.
What's it like? Well, you know what it's like? It's you started off thinking that this was something that you wanted to do. Everybody in the world told you why you, and the chances are really, really slim, but you did it anyway. And here I am, 40 years later, going, hey, you know what? I actually did it. It could have been more. It could have been better. It could have been, always something like that. But I did it, and I was able to provide well for a family and do a lot of projects that I'm proud of, and pay the rent. And so it's been a good run.
Now, are you? We're going to get right to this in the beginning. Are you tired of Q? Is it annoying after? I mean, we're going to have to talk about it a little bit.
Well, you know what? I have to say, it's the tomato that stuck on the wall. There's no question about that. But you know what? You have to be known for something, and because the alternative is not so good. And I'm happy to have been known for that. But then there are a number of other shows and a number of other things that are not part of the mass media that I do that I'm also known for. So it's and Q gave me opportunities that I would not have had, or I would have had to find another show that gave me those opportunities. So I'm not complaining in any way.
That's a good point. You could be known as the guy that misannounced Miss Universe and gave it to the wrong person.
That's right. Or just the guy who actually it didn't work out for, and there. At any one time in our business, and just in SAG, the Screen Actors Guild, the union, at any one time, there's more than 95% of us who are not working. Mm-hmm. So it's not an easy profession by any stretch of the imagination. So as I said, I'm not complaining.
I suppose it's a mixed bag with everybody who gets, like you say, it's the tomato that's stuck to the wall. But in this case, it was a hell of a tomato. And while we get the Star Trek portion of the program out of the way, if I can say this, Q's actually one of the most iconic characters that's not a regular character on the show. Is that fair to say?
It is, when you consider that I only did 9 episodes.
That seems incredible because he's so powerful of a character. I mean, mentally, obviously, he's a godlike character, so he's powerful in that way. But yeah, I was shocked when you said that in an interview.
Well, 9 episodes over over 3 series too. So for the next gen, I did, I think it was 5 or 6 episodes. That's all.
Do you have a favorite quote from there? I think mine from Q was on Deep Space Nine when Ben Sisko took a swing at him, and you said to him, "Picard never hit me."
There was a quote that, I only watch these things once. There was some quote about it being so difficult to be omnipotent. I thought was but I can't. I'm going to disappoint you because I don't remember it exactly anymore. But it was. I do remember it was in the elevator, and I was very frustrated.
What I want to know most about Q is what was it like to be impotent, immortal, and still have to answer to Corbin Burnson?
Omnipotent, I think. Right?
Did I say impotent? Did I say impotent?
You did.
That's a Brianism. No, omnipotent and immortal, but still have to answer to Corbin Burnson. I always found that a little bit of a what do you say there? Didn't really work for me in my mind. You're so you have a very patrician bearing. You're a tall, haughty, sort of intellectual seeming guy. I think it's fair to say. Do you tend to get typecast like that? Is it? Can I look for a hidden gem where you play a hillbilly?
No, that's right. That's right. All of my hillbilly roles are in the future for me. I haven't I'm sure there's deliverance out there somewhere.
There you go.
I don't know.
But do you find that? I mean, you've had a huge long career. Father figures. Is it tough to break out of a mold once you're in that the community in Hollywood there?
Well, I'll tell you, in the theater. Which, as I said, I just finished a play. In the theater, I tend to play kind of leads. That has to do because I've got a big voice, and I'm tall, and I have a large presence. All of those things that work for the theater in movies don't really work. Mm-hmm. My voice sort of gets in the way, and people think of it as being not natural enough. And yet, it isn't anything that I've done to it. It's got a lot of timber, I guess is the word. I have, a large forehead that, of course, must make me a brainiac. So I'm much more of a character person when it comes to film and TV.
Didn't you get your start in theater? I think it was Mr. Biddle. Am I getting your 6th grade teacher's name that forced you to be Hal? I think in Henry V.
Yeah, you're quite right. Good homework there.
That's right.
I was a kid who didn't know how to read, and I managed to flunk out of 2 schools. This was before there was never, back when I was going to grammar school and what have you, things were not broken down into learning disability or anything else. You were either good or you were stupid. and
a binary system.
Yeah. You flunked, and you either flunked out of the school, them saying we don't want him to come back, or you flunked a grade, which I did as well. And I went to a school called the Booth School, which no longer exists, but it was a little tiny school for, frankly, a lot of kids a little bit like me. And we were told that the next step was military school. And I had this wonderful teacher. He was the assistant principal, but he also taught history and music and soccer, and it was like a little private school in Philadelphia. And he would put together shows, and they were very ambitious shows for what would be a class of 19. Our graduating class was 19 kids. So he would come in and he would say, we're going to do Mozart's Marriage of Figaro. Well, we didn't know what he was talking about. It was like, yeah, great, whatever, who cares? Or Handel's Messiah. And in the springtime, this particular spring when I was 14, he said, we're going to do Henry V. And he said, Lancie, you're going to play Hal. Well, I could barely read it. And I went ahead and learned it and performed it. And a man who had come to see his granddaughter, in the end, somebody who was very influential. He was the editor of the Pelican Shakespeare. The Shakespeare editions that all the kids had in every school in America. And he came to see his granddaughter, and he took my father aside after this little show, and he said, if your son is interested, I would encourage him because he has a flair for this. It isn't like most parents want their children to be actors, but given my history up until then, having flung twice, my father went, well, hey, any Portman.
I was just going to use that expression. That's great. Get that boy into a school, man. Let him be an actor if he wants to. That's great.
Right. That's how it got started.
And Hal, if correct me if I'm wrong, is kind of the younger Henry, who is like impetuous and just kind of being the rampant youth. I mean, were you able to kind of channel your inner rebel?
The character of Hal in Henry V. I mean, you have part one. You have Henry IV, part one and part two, and Hal is the son of Henry IV, and he's a complete screw up, and marvelously, he's a womanizing, drunken prankster. He's friendly with Falstaff. I mean, he's just a great character and a complete ne'er-do-well. And then when he gets to be Prince Hal, he gets to be Henry V. He then does a major turn. And he becomes the great king, Henry V. So yeah, it's great stuff.
Once more into the breach.
For a 14-year-old to be playing it, it's pretty heavy.
That's something. Yeah, I know, 14. That was a good story.
Now, speaking of being young, part of the research leads us to know that you were an atheist from the age of 6. Is that right?
Yes. I was hardly an atheist at 6. What I was, though, is that
that's my liberal really paraphrasing, perhaps.
I hadn't really thought of it this way in terms of following this thread of being asked to leave. I guess along with being asked to leave a bunch of schools, I was also asked to leave Sunday school, and I was you have to understand, I was a very polite kid. I was not there was no juvenile delinquent in me at all. But I was asked to leave because I kept on saying, apparently, things like, but that doesn't make sense.
Mm-hmm.
But that just doesn't make sense. Until it became clear, I guess, that I was maybe somewhat influencing or certainly annoying the Sunday school teacher, influencing the other kids. What's a 6-year-old? What sort of power is a 6-year-old going to have? But I just never bought it.
Mm-hmm.
And then, as an 8-year-old, I was asked to leave. I was asked to leave the Cub Scouts because the den mother insisted that we pray, and I wasn't into that. And
there goes the Weeblo badge.
Right, and I made a very I made a major connection, and that is that she would say, if you don't pray, you won't get the donuts. You won't get your donut at the end. We would arrive, we'd go down in the basement, and there was a big thing of donuts, and I came from a different type of family, so we didn't have donuts. And I was like, oh my God, donuts! and I got this very strong thing which was this sort of manipulative type of thing. You do what I want, you'll get a donut. You pray, you get a donut. And those two elements, it just doesn't make sense. The manipulation of it. And as I grew older, and I went to, until 13 or so, I went to a school where you had to go for chapel and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. I just began going, this is getting in the way. This is a sort of a layer of thinking that seems to get in the way, and mostly it's manipulative. And so when I say to you, well, he's an atheist, my friends, many of my friends who have kind of come to this conclusion, sort of, they all started as like altar boys or something. I mean, they really went way, way deep into the whole notion of religion, and then had a sense of betrayal and and
catharsis and
all this.
Somebody's nodding his head.
I never had that.
You never had that, but did your parents come at you with any kind of background, or was it just not discussed? Were they disappointed? Did they have a religious background?
My father was not religious, and my mother had been brought up as a Catholic. And the only thing that they found that they were disappointed, I guess, with me was that I had no problem at a dinner table at somebody's house or something like that to simply go, Johnny, aren't you going to pray? No. No.
No one's the boss of me. Kind of that attitude.
That?
No one's the boss of me. You can't make me do this.
I'm sure a lot of it had to do with that. I'm sure a lot of it had to do with that. And then I know as I got older, I went through a period where it was like, I'm just really tired of having to listen to things which I consider to be, like imaginary friends. Mm-hmm. And, stories that might be parables or might be a metaphor for telling it, but you're telling it to me as if it's literal. Yeah. And I'm just like, I'm not there with you, man. I'm just not there. So don't include me in with the winks and the nods, like, I know you're with us, because I'm not. I'm just not.
Speaking of literal, I thought you mentioned, and fast forward, that you were at the University of Nebraska doing a play called The Tennessee Monkey Trial, which is like an adaptation of the famous Supreme Court case, and that you asked what people believed, and 80% or a large number said that they did believe that the Earth was created in 4004 BC, and you were quite shocked. That's not quite how it worked out. Ed Asner and I were on tour with a show that used a great deal of the actual trial transcripts from the Scopes Monkey trial. And then there was interstitial narration that pulled all of this together. So you were watching the high points of a trial with some great dialogue. I mean, just great. It's just amazing how William Jennings Bryan and
Clarence Darrow,
Clarence Darrow, how they could speak extemporaneously. I mean, it was just so. And in any case, wonderful stuff. Ed and I would switch every other college. We would switch, and this happened a couple of times, but in this particular, this was the first time it happened. I'm in a classroom, and there are about 100 kids. They're asking me acting questions, blah, blah, blah. And at the end, the teacher gets up and says, Mr. Lancie's in the show, and I saw it last night. It was really terrific, and I really recommend for all of you to see it. And I said, well, thank you very much. And I said, thank you, class. And as I'm leaving, just as I'm just about to turn, and I thanked him, I was just about to turn, he gave me this look, which was like, watch this. He said, how many of you, with a show of hands, believe that the world was created, whatever it is,
4004
October
BC.
23rd, 10 o'clock in the morning.
Oh, wow, they had the day. Oh, wow, they had the hour. Impressive. Okay.
And about 80 kids raised their hands. My first reaction was that my head just dropped. And I can, even right now, I can see my shoes. And the air sort of dropped. The air sort of like left me. It's just like, oh, like that. And it wasn't, I didn't go, oh, what silly people. I didn't have any of that. 500 years of things that we as human beings have learned. Mm-hmm. All of science and all of the discoveries that we've made, they kind of like just got washed away. That was the first thing. And the next thing was curiosity got just flushed down the drain at that moment in my mind. Mm-hmm. And it really hit me. And I raised my head and I looked back at him and he was like, yeah, okay. And I went, yeah. And I went back, thank you. And I went back and I told the cast. Then we would go and do the show and we would have talkbacks afterwards. Most of the people were frankly on our side, but there were some people who came in who were voted for bear. And I remember asking those people, I said, why must you hold on to this thing from Bishop Ussher? You know, Bishop Ussher back in whatever, 1670 or something like that. You know, he didn't have geology and nuclear science and you know, he didn't have any of the things at his disposal. So he wasn't a stupid guy. So he took the one thing that he had at his disposal and he just went back and, you know, counted all the begats and he came up with this number. Why would you hold on to this in the light of everything else? 500 years of, as I said, of discoveries. Why would you hold on to this? You know, we have a great understanding of minus, 0 to the minus 13 or something like that in terms of the Big Bang. But we don't know 14 to the minus 14. We don't know that. We just don't know that. At which point you can say, well, there you have it, God. At which everybody in the room would go, well, okay, that's fine. 4004 BC, there are a lot of people on this earth walking around.
Yeah, I mean,
know all of that.
The Chinese were there for 10,000 years before that, weren't they? They have books.
It's so ignorant. And I go, why would you allow yourself to be kind of lambasted? So in any case,
The Onion
sort of what made me
had a satirical headline that said that ancient Sumerians look on with bemusement as God creates world. I just love that.
You're listening to the Mythicist Milwaukee Show. It's a special edition bringing you actor, musician, Renaissance man, and atheist. Apparently, John Lancie, really, really excited to talk. We're going to move on to the Reason Rally. You're speaking, performing at the Reason Rally. Is this a new thing for you? Do you consider yourself an activist? Are you in the movement?
Well, you know what? It is a new thing. Actually, from that experience with the Scopes thing, I began to become more and more aware of certain places in the country where there's a lot of that 8-year-old kid. I'm for that 8-year-old kid. Mm-hmm. I want to be there are a lot of 8-year-old kids out there who are going, this doesn't really make sense, but they don't have a place. They don't have a place to go. You know, they're in a community where they're being fed a lot of misinformation and stuff. So I began to become more and more concerned about them, and more concerned, frankly, for those 80 people in that room who you kind of go, oh, guys, but you can't hold on to this notion and be actively in the 21st century when you see all of the religious stuff that's going on in a lot of the other parts of the world, and the potential for kind of essentially a Christian Taliban here. I just think it's time to be reasonable about it. I'm not in any way. I mean, listen, I have a friend who's going through a terrible time right now, and he goes to church every morning. Well, I'm more power to him. I think that's great. if he can derive some solace from that, he needs solace. But he's not also going around and saying, we're going to change the way science textbooks are created. My big concern is frankly when religion becomes politicized. So in my little way, if I can simply say that, and somebody else goes, well, see, I feel the same way too. Well, that's enough. That's enough. So that's my interest.
So you see yourself doing more of this in the future, then? Yes.
Yeah. I'm going to Chicago for the Humanist convention there.
End of May. So for those that are listening,
end of May.
Prior to end of May 2016.
Yeah, last weekend of May. That's the AHA convention in Chicago at McCormick Place. Get yourself to that if you can't make it to Washington, or make it to both and see John Lancie at both events.
Yeah.
Mostly what I'm interested in is that if people, what can I do in the area of entertainment and what have you, is that we used to produce Leonard Nimoy and I used to produce a lot of radio and shows like that. Well, somebody came to me not too long ago and said, I'd love for you to narrate some things that have to do with the Galapagos and how the evolution works and how evolution works. And so I said, sure, absolutely. Somebody else came to me, a friend of mine who is an animator, a really top-end animator. And he said, I'd love to create little things on science. I said, just call me up. I'll do them for free. Let's get this information out there, and while it is out there, let's also make it easy for that 8-year-old who might in fact just be going, I'm willing to say that it doesn't make sense, and I would like to see other things going on.
Do you think it would be harder? I watched your openly secular video, which was really good, and I encourage folks to watch that. Do you think being near like the end of your career, I think in one of your blogs, one of the pieces that I've read, that you said you're kind of getting away from acting, or you didn't want to do that as much anymore. Does that make it easier to come out openly secular? I guess since you're cute and you could go back in time, would you do it if you were 21 and starting out?
Yeah, no, it wasn't a function for me of, oh my gosh, I won't work if I say these things. No, it wasn't that at all. As a matter of fact, what it was that kind of got me going is that a friend of mine called me up, who I've known for years and years and years. And, and this is a non-subject for us. We sort of like, where are you religion-wise? Oh, I'm not. That's not an issue in my life. Oh, me neither. And that's sort of the end of it, And then maybe the other thing is, boy, I'm so tired of listening to how some people want to tell you how to run your life, especially in terms of morality and stuff like that. Yeah, me too. And that's the end of it. He called me up and he said, Richard Dawkins is coming to town. Would you like to host him? I said, oh my God, great. I've read his books. Yeah, absolutely. So I hosted him for a party. And I brought in a lot of friends of mine who also, were that way. And that's sort of how it started, where they said, gee, would you like to say something on Openly Secular? And I said, sure. So it isn't, it's just coincidental that it's now.
Okay.
And it makes, it's coincidental that it's now. And frankly, most of the people that are in my business feel the same way that I do. I mean, we're not actively irreligious. We just think it's kind of something that you do at home.
I was going to be my next question is, does it affect anybody in the Hollywood community to be either way, to be a firebrand atheist or to be overly religious? We get I get the impression from the outside that it probably affects you worse if you're one of the a right-wing religious nut job.
Well, Kirk Cameron, I think, has hurt his career.
Well, and Patricia Heaton's made comments that it's harder for her to get work, I think, because she gets lumped in with crazies, to put it in air quotes in her, whatever she said about it.
I just finished a play. I just finished this wonderful play in Cleveland. And the writer was brought up very Catholic. I had it's a 5-person play. 2 of the actors were very religious, going to church services on Sunday, and the pastor was an excommunicated guy pastor who apparently gave marvelous sermons, and it's just, I wanted to go. It's just that it didn't work out. I wasn't able to go. So we all talk about these things, but we're not at odds with it. Mm-hmm. It isn't as if
it's not an us and them kind of thing.
Exactly. It's respectful.
Isn't that nice to have respectful dialogue for a change?
Yeah. And you might be surprised, and that is that one of my pleasures, I know it's really geeky, but one of my pleasures is that I listen to a lot of college lectures. Many of them are religious lectures, mostly having to do with what I love about all of this is the history of what is it about us as human beings. I love the fact that pre-monotheism, there were no religious wars. That somebody in Athens who would go to Crete would say, "Now, who is your wind god?" It's the such and so. Who is, it's this guy. It's perfect. I'm going to worship that wind god. And when you come to Athens, it's the such and such wind god. Great, what have you? Human beings seem to need this. I have not. It's not something that I've ever needed. Now, understand something. I have also never gone, nor do I hope, through a trauma in my life, which is so overwhelming that having some sort of religious connection would be helpful to me. But I do know a few people who have. It's been helpful for them. But these are, lost children. And it's really stuff that you just don't want to get near. And so they have found comfort. But I just don't have that gene, I guess. And nor have I had the event. So it's not something that I think about other than when somebody tells me, what to do and how to do it. Yeah. And where's their religion on the sleeve. And then, wants to dictate all sorts of particularly social issues. And that's when I get upset about it.
So he's wiping the sleeve on you.
Right. And also, one of the things, going back to the college thing, is that I'm of the opinion that if you are so willing to go down this path and be acceptant, I had a young girl who actually after that particular event with the 4004 BC, I said, "Would you have raised your hand?" She said, "Oh, absolutely." And I said, "Why is that? Why would you do that? In spite of everything that we know, why would you do that?" She said, "Well, God is my bus driver."
Okay.
I said, "Well, I don't know what that means. What does that mean to you?" And she said, "Well, it means that I can get up into my bus and go back to the back of the bus and party hardy, knowing that he's driving my bus." And I went, well, that's a level of lack of, I didn't say this to her, but I'm thinking, how utterly irresponsible that sounds to me.
That's a heck of a hall pass.
Oh my God. So, and what makes me concerned then is that people who have that type of thinking are very susceptible to being hoodwinked. There's a lack of critical thinking.
Yep.
And in this day and age, especially in the politics that we're dealing with, you've got the, Fox News and all that type of thing. You really do have to have some critical thinking skills here.
Oh, yeah.
Because otherwise you would accept all of this stuff.
And strap a bomb to your chest, perhaps, and walk into a marketplace with it. This is the
possibly.
This is the end result of this suggestivity that he's talking about. People are able to.
Yeah. If Fox News is polarized, Al Jazeera Arabic is certainly polarized.
Yeah, you should be able to listen to stuff and go, oh, I don't know. I have, again, I mean, all this, a lot of this conspiracy stuff that you hear, you just kind of go, come on, guys, really?
Where do you get your news? I was going to ask you that. And you made a great quote that sensationalism rules in the media at the expense of the truth being the victim. And I love that. But where do you get your news then?
I listen a lot to I listen to NPR. I listen to the News Hour. I read maybe about an hour a day off of from the news that you see. That just I get the Google feeds, and so I'm tracking down. So I might read, in fact, the Milwaukee Journal. I don't know if there is a Milwaukee Journal, but I mean,
yes.
I'll go with Google. You're able to go into all sorts of news, into printed news that's outside of that. I usually, and I'm sure somebody's going to say, well, he's just a liberal. But, I've been the New York Times, the Washington Post, the LA Times. I also, the International Tribune I look at. I listen to BBC. I take a lot of news in.
That's more important to get a broad base and form your own opinions.
and I triangulate. I try to make sure that I'm not just in some sort of hermetically sealed jar listening to the same stuff all the time.
One of my favorite authors, Irshad Manji, puts it this way. She says, is the Viagra of identity politics keeping your emotions up? I mean, how do you feel about, is identity politics on the rise, and what do you make of it?
How do I feel about identity politics? I don't know quite what you mean by that.
But meaning that I'm a Christian, I ought to vote this way. I'm a Muslim, I ought to do this. You could be even a rabid atheist saying, this, it must be. But self-identified Republican, Democrat, any which way you want to call yourself, straight, cisgendered, transgendered, all of that.
I see. I understand what you're saying. Well, let me obliquely respond to it this way. I sail. Okay, I'm a sailor. It's about just being practical. If there's a problem, fix it. The ideological ways of fixing the problems, I begin to get a little concerned about, and I don't care whose position it is. I'm much more interested, much more attuned, much more looking for the problem solving that has to do with practical problem solving than ideological problem solving.
That makes sense.
He's John Delancey. You're listening to the MYTHICIST Milwaukee Show. I want to remind everybody to join. Go to MYTHICISTMilwaukee.com and consider getting a membership, and also Patreon. We have a Patreon page, and we need your help to keep bringing you cool-ass guests like Q himself from Star Trek. The voice of Discord these days. Is that an ongoing thing, or is the My Little Pony done?
Yeah, no, it's an ongoing thing, yeah.
And why wouldn't it be? Yeah. You got a fan club there. Are you a brony yourself?
You have two sets of fan bases now, Trekkies and bronies.
Are you a brony yourself?
Well, to the extent that I did the documentary because I thought that they were being misidentified and being made fun of, and I just thought that was wrong. And I had the power by knowing how to raise the money and knew the people to actually make the documentary that we went in and created a documentary so that they could identify themselves before they were unfortunate, that they were identified in a really unfortunate and misleading sort of way.
Have you seen that? I'm going to look for that documentary. I didn't even know it existed, and now I'm going to find it.
I tried to
find it. It's on Netflix. It's called BronyCon. Yeah.
Nice.
It was 2 a.m.
And I think that what's going to be, it's been out for 3 years or something like that. Mm-hmm. But I think what's going to be really interesting are sociologists in 20 years looking at that, because it's really a slice of a particular, time and with a particular group of people and a particular need that's being fulfilled. None of it is salacious or perverted or weird or anything else, but how interesting it is that for a show that's called, My Little Pony, Friendship is Magic. And there are elements of friendship which have to do about being honest and truthful and, whatever. I can't remember what they are exactly what they are.
Humanist-like values, right?
So what are we going to do? What are we going to do is to make fun of these people because, oh my gosh, this show, which was for 10-year-olds and girls, is being watched by 20-year-old guys, and they're watching a show about being kind and generous and honest and friendly and what have you, so we're going to make fun of them? I went, that's wrong. That's just wrong.
Yeah, what does it say about the culture that men have such a thin fairway of things that are approved?
Exactly. And I dare say that the religious community, I don't want to make this too broad of a brush, but some members of the religious community were the most vocal in attacking it. And you kind of go, what? What do you mean? Why would you do that? So then that's when I said, look, let's just make a documentary and we'll film everything we see. And then we'll cut it and we'll see what we've got. And I think it's a very uplifting slice of life.
You said, speaking of like things practical, I remember you quoted as saying, there's no bronies in ISIS. Like it could.
Yes, right. Yes, right, exactly.
Who are you looking forward to seeing at Reason Rally, John? Are you a fan of anybody?
You know what? I know Johnny Depp's going to be there. Somebody told me that, and I have to do my due diligence in all of this. To be honest, I just got home last night, and I don't know if you there's no reason why you should know what doing a play is like, but this was a very intense play. We worked really hard on it. It was that's all we did. And then, you go back to your apartment and you go to sleep and you get up in the morning and you get ready to do it again. And I just thought I'll have to wait until I get home to start really working on the Reason Rally, where I'm quiet and I can be just by myself and down in my office and work for hours on it. So
now, have you met a Johnny Depp before?
I'm looking forward to the event. For the humanist thing, they asked me when I come in whether I would like to just fly in and do my thing and leave, and I said no, I really want to be there for 3 days so I can really absorb it. And I feel the same way about the Reason Rally.
I'm wondering if being an actor, being in Hollywood, have you met Johnny Depp? Would it be more interesting for you to meet the scientists like Krauss?
No, I dare say he's in another class.
I was wondering if it's in the end would be more interesting for you to meet like the scientists and are you a real science geek? Does that kind of stuff?
I am a science geek, and I have a number of friends who are at Caltech, and so I go over there for lectures. We have science soirees in our house every 2 or 3 months, where we've had really marvelous people. There was a woman who came over from JPL who handles the infrared
telescope
radar array for asteroids, tracking asteroids.
Ooh, nice.
And so I'm a big I love all that stuff.
You were at Kent State when the shootings went down in 1970, and again, not a lot of us are old enough to even remember that, but what must that have been like?
Oh, well, that was I was on tour. The theater department had a touring. There were some of us who could be on tour. So, and that was quite wonderful. And we would go off for a week at a time, 6 days, I guess it was, and we would go to a particular little town in Ohio, and we would set up and we do shows and teach, and it was a wonderful time. But there had been some issues. I can't remember exactly what it was, but we were told that instead of going back on Saturday, that we were going to be having to go back to campus on Friday. Went back to campus, and I remember seeing the ROTC building go up. Mm-hmm. And then I was very much involved in the protests around the architecture building, and then was there when the guard ran down and then turned around and then ran back up the hill and fired. I went to the march in Washington, and this. I'm going to tell you something that you're just almost not going to believe, but I went to the march in Washington, and I'm walking there. There are thousands of people, maybe hundreds of thousands. And as I'm walking along, I'm going, I'm not really making any dent here. And I was actually there. I mean, there within 20 yards of the guns that were. So I really know what I saw and what have you. I peeled off and I went into a phone booth and I looked up our senator, which was Senator Young.
In the phone book.
In the phone book. And I went to his house and I knocked on the door. And, the door opened. There was a servant. It's not really the right word for it, but anything, somebody, the major domo of the house. And I said, I'm John Lancie. I was at Kent State, and I think that I have some information that the senator, some eyewitness information that the senator might like to hear. And I was invited, and he closed the door. And then he came back and he said, yes, the senator would like to speak to you. So I went in. And I'll never forget, he said to me, I'm 20 years old. He said to me, what can I offer you? And I said, I'll have a double bird. And it came to me in a glass that I had never seen before. This beautiful leaded glass, this old-fashioned, that was wonderful, a wonderful glass. And I told him the story, and he said, this is very compelling. I'd like you to meet Robert Kennedy. He said, I will make that happen. But young man, you need a white shirt. I said, well, and he said, and he told this guy to go upstairs and bring me a white shirt. So he gave me a white shirt. And I can't remember anymore. It's so long ago, whether it was the next day or it might have been the same day. That's true if the white shirt was right then. But in any case, I went to the Senate. And I was introduced at the Senate, and I was introduced to not Robert Kennedy, but Ted Kennedy.
Ted. Yes, Ted.
Yeah, Ted Kennedy. And I was introduced to Ted Kennedy. And I told him the story, and then he said, why don't you go up? I went out and I said a few words to the Senate. It's sort of weird because you always think that you're going to be, you think, oh my God, I'm going to walk out there. It's going to be, hundreds of people and what have you. When you walk out there and it's sort of empty. So in any case, I spoke to kind of an empty room. And then I came back and he said, you did very well, thank you. And I said, yes, but I need to speak to the president.
When you're on a roll.
You only do these things when you're 20 years old. So he said, well, I can get you into the White House, but I don't know if you're going to be speaking to the president or not. So I went to the White House and they put me in a room and a kid, I was going to say, a kid. I mean, a guy like, a couple of years older than I am came in, except he was the guy in school that I always hated. This is a guy who's essentially 2 years older than I am with wingtip shoes and a three-piece suit, and he's already balding. And, but, he's the guy who got the A's in school, and I'm the guy who barely got a D. And he said, so how can I help you? And I said, hey, I didn't come all this way to talk to you. Okay. So you just go and find your supervisor because, excuse me. And I, so I was still an actor, and I knew how to act a little bit. So it rattled him, and he left. And then I got up and I started walking around the White House. And I got into a room, and to this day, I regret it because I don't remember if it was Ehrlichman or Haldeman, but I got all the way up there. I was very good with the secretaries. Mm-hmm. And I had my story. And I went into an office, and there was this other chap with me, a kid also from Kent. And we went in there, and we told our story. And it was a compelling story to this extent, and that is that we were quite sure that the National Guard would be a whitewash, which in fact it was. Mm-hmm. And mistakenly, but I didn't know it at the time, I thought that the FBI would be a whitewash. And there were things that were not said. People didn't know that there was a fence, and that the crowd had not, in fact, they hadn't aggressively gone after the guard, but that because of the fence and the way in which people move, the people, the kids went around them and stuff. So I had my story explaining what was going on, stuff like that. And then we finished, and I said, I'd like to speak to the president now. And the guys, the chief of staff said, you're not going to speak to the president. This is as far as it goes, but you have done very, very well.
I guess so.
But there will be no Dick Nixon for you.
And so I knew that was it. And I have to say that when the FBI report came out, it was really spot on. It was great. It made me really proud, actually. I went, wow, they really got it. Wow. They really got it. The National Guard report was a travesty, but the FBI report was really good, and that was the extent of my that's the
So critical thinking.
That's a great story, though. That's a Watergate names there, Ehrlichman, Haldeman. I feel like I'm back in the 70s looking at the news as a kid. But good stuff. We just have a couple minutes left. The live feed quits at 1 hour exactly, but it doesn't matter. If we go over it, that portion will still be on the finished version, so I'm not going to worry about quitting right on time. It's John Lancie, arguably the biggest guest we've ever had on the show, man. Thanks so much. I'm like a little fanboy geeking out here.
Oh, I know.
Talking to you today. What are you going to do at the Reason Rally? You're just going to talk? You're going to do an oboe solo?
Oh, let's break out the oboe.
No, I'm not going to do an oboe solo. I guess so. I mean, I guess so. I'll have to. I'm sure they're going to ask me to say a few words, and that'll be it.
Well, great deal. We're looking.
And I'm going to meet with people the night before. I know that there are events the night before, which I have to do.
Yeah, there's a VIP dinner. We're actually we're heavily involved in volunteering and organizing the Reason Rally. All of us here on the team. I teased you about the oboe solo because I was involved in bringing the bands to the event. So I kind of know what's going on there a little bit, and we'll be there right up front. So I'm looking forward to meeting you in person.
Well, then
too.
You have to come up and introduce yourself.
I sure will. No, please, a selfie with Q. I'm not going to miss the opportunity.
Why? I got to put that next to the Klingons.
I'll be chasing you down, man. I know you can't disappear in real life.
You know what? I think we should try, we should just kind of draft behind him as he tries this same presidential thing in demanding to meet Johnny Depp. Right. We'll just kind of follow behind him. We're
going to lose the live feed in about 10 seconds. We'll keep going. But for everybody, thanks for joining, and look for the link later to the show. We'll see you at the regular time. John Lancie at the Reason Rally in June. It's June 2nd through the 5th, and there's a bunch of stuff. There's the make sure you're at the cocktail reception afterwards. That's going to be your best chance, for my money, to spend a minute with Johnny Depp. That's what I'm looking forward to. I got my ticket.
I'm already happy. I'm content. This has been an absolute pleasure.
Fantastic.
It has been fun. I thank you.
No, we thank you, and we look forward to meeting you in person, and thanking you for all the great work that you're going to do in the future as you get involved in our secular movement. It's really, really important, I think, to have visible folks, people who people remember. John Davidson was a big super. Do you know John Davidson?
I do.
That one killed me, because I was a kid. I'd stay home sick from school, and Grandma would have the TV on, and John Davidson. All I wanted to be was John Davidson when I was growing up. He got to kiss all the pretty girls. He could sing. He could dance. He could act. He did it all. He was good looking. He had a bunch of hair. Right? Was John Davidson going to be there too? But really, the people who are willing to step forward and call themselves atheists or call themselves non-religious and lead the rest of the folks who like you made fun of earlier. A lot of people struggled to come to atheism, and it was kind of gifted to you through the circumstances of you failing so many different schools and whatnot, and you had an easy road to it like a lot of people didn't. So we really appreciate what you're doing for us in this movement and raising the profile of atheist people. So thank you, John Lancie.
Well, that's very nice of you. Thanks.
Right. Very good. I wondered if I could get one thing. I listened to your entrepreneurial talk at UC Merced, and you were talking about the power of secrets. And I'm wondering if I could drag one out of you. Is there any cool story that you're willing to admit where maybe you got to cue with your wife and she was like, stop playing a character, some tidbit, anything that I might be able to drag out of you on a cool story?
I'll tell you one, a quick one. The shot is Rachel Ward coming down this staircase, and she looks fabulous. And so they shot at that. Mm-hmm. Then they are turning on to all the people at the bottom of the staircase. Well, I played this sort of the geeky boyfriend who the parents wanted her to marry, but who she wasn't interested in. And we're all dressed up in tuxedos and what have you. I was sort of agonizing all day about this shot because while there wasn't anything that was said, it's the shot read, camera turns on to whatever my name was, Alex or something like that. And he has the smile of someone who has been smitten with love.
Smitten with love.
And I thought, oh, Christ, what? I mean, oh, my God. And they're going to come on me and, they're going to come down on me and then turn the camera on me. What is that look going to be? What is that look going to be? I go outside as they're doing a setup, and I know that I'm the next shot. And for an actor, that can also be sort of a really there's a lot of tension in that because it's a really self-conscious shot. And you kind of go, I don't want to be self-conscious during that time. I want all my attention on her, but I know that I really won't be able to put my attention on her. I need a secret. I need something that no one else knows. And all of a sudden it came to me. I was wearing a tuxedo. I pulled out the pocket of the tuxedo and ripped the pocket, and I got into position, and I just let my hand wander around my
your cue?
And I looked up.
I'm not sure what you're talking about.
And there it was. I was just looking up. And I had this sort of really wonderful kind of smile on my face, holding myself in front of a huge group of people who had no idea. And that was my secret. And I had this little smile as I looked up to her.
Acting tricks
when the show came out.
It fit the bill? It fits Smitten with Love?
When it came out, people said, oh, yeah. Oh, I love that first look at you. You had a great look on your face. Keep that to yourself.
Well, we're MYTHICIST Milwaukee. What we really, as a group, are involved in is exploring the commonalities between religious origins in terms of the mythologies that they evolved from. And, the current thinking among mythicists is that Jesus and Moses and historical figures like that never actually existed historically and are completely made up. Have you ever paid any attention to that scholarship?
Nobody knows about Moses, but I think it's pretty clear that Jesus was an actual figure, but I don't, my feeling is that it's Paul who was the PR guy there. I mean, who really, he's the one who turned it into something.
Augustine?
There are a lot of Jesuses that were walking around the Palestine at that time doing pretty much the same thing.
Yeah, I tend to agree with that. It was an archetype of just kind of a crazy aesthetic, wandering and preaching.
Jesus might be like a silhouette as opposed to a deep character.
Yeah, right.
It's a period of time that we actually know pretty well. The Romans in their occupations were not in their occupation of countries and what have you. Were not unlike the Nazis. They wrote everything down. They have a lot of information. All that stuff about to be taxed, or the entire Roman world. Everybody had to go back to
the census, right?
Their thing. I mean, that's just
not practical.
It's just not. It's not practical, right? and for it not to be written down, for that, there's absolutely no indication of that at all. I mean, it just doesn't. They had to do some real twisting to get their David story, their Messiah story lined up. So we know all of that stuff, and that doesn't take away from the notion that be nice,
right?
Be nice, do unto others. All these things are good. I think that these things are good things. It's just as I said before, it's just the politicization of it that gets really crazy.
So maybe ask like you said, ask what you think, not what you believe.
Yes, exactly.
Fair enough.
Exactly.
Have you seen? We found a small gem called John Lancie trolled by the Bronies. Did you see that by chance? It's awesome.
No,
3 minute.
I haven't.
You should look. Do you remember this? You probably remember the story. It's a story about a guy who went to one of the Comic-Cons, stood in line to talk to you, gave you a picture to sign, and the picture it appeared to be inappropriate.
Could have been interpreted in a number of ways. That a tail might have been something other than a tail or a wing.
Oh, yes, right. I've seen that picture. It's hilarious.
He tells a whole story.
He tells a great
about
story
how you basically made fun of him the whole time when he came
I'll
up.
tell you, the Bronies are extremely prolific when it comes to to music and to animation. I mean, they create. Take a look at the. Take a look at that documentary. One of the things in which I said in the documentary, Mike Brockhoff and I did it. I said, Mike, everything that we use, every visual that we use, and every song that we use has to be inside the fandom. All the arrows need to be pointing inward, and so all of that stuff is their own stuff.
That's cool.
Yeah. I mean, who knows how long it's going to last? It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. You just can't call these people a bunch of homosexual perverts who are living on food stamps and disabilities so that they can watch cartoons in their parents.
And why are they always on welfare? Everyone says that. That can't possibly be true. It just doesn't stand up. I found that funny.
And I just thought, give me a fucking break. Excuse me. You've got a big mouth, and how are you using it to make fun of somebody who you don't know shit about?
Yeah. You haven't talked to directly. So. And then you mentioned, too, Bronies from Israel, Ukraine, Saudi Arabia even. So the fact that it is cross-cultural means that it does have an appeal to a certain audience.
Right. And, and I make really clear, I go, look, guys, I was asked to do one, and then I did, a bunch of others and what have you. And I watch it, I've seen a few of them. I'm not going to I don't need to be a brony. I don't need to be a big fan to understand what's going on and to go, oh yeah, sure, absolutely, by all means. In any case.
Is there any art that you admire in the? I know it's different. You mentioned that you watch them all once, and you probably don't have a lot of time. But is there anything that you really enjoy? What are your favorite entertainments on TV?
Oh, I'm not a big TV watcher, and it's and that all goes actually back to when I was a kid. They pulled the TV out of my house because
you screwed that up too, didn't you?
They were trying to figure out a way for me to read, and so I did not grow up with TV. Like tonight, my wife and I are going to. I really enjoy going to the movies. I like it to be really big. I like it to be quiet and dark, and everybody's paying attention to the same thing. I like that. Otherwise, I don't really watch much of anything.
Okay, so no clapping during the movies. Is that correct?
No talking. No, nothing.
Thank you. I hate clapping during the movies.
Clapping, talking,
well,
snapping gum.
And people are talking and eating and that's why oftentimes I will choose, if it's a movie that it's really important to me, I will find a time where I can go like at 10 in the morning.
Good
where
idea.
I can be almost completely alone.
Nice. You a fan of independent films, small films?
Yes. Yeah, when I was in Cleveland. I went to the Cleveland Film Festival in between rehearsals.
That's cool. Is it hard to find something that comes out of Hollywood that's not formulaic?
Well, listen, television now is coming up with great stuff. I mean, this is a real golden age of television because of Netflix and Amazon and HBO.
House of Cards.
It's fun, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
What's that?
It's fun.
Yeah,
it is. It's and I love and occasionally we have 4-show weekends. In other words, we do 8 shows. We were doing 8 shows a week, but on the weekends, so it's Friday, Saturday matinee, Sunday, Saturday matinee, Saturday night, and then Sunday. I made the mistake. One of the cats said to me, "Oh, I think you'd really like the fall." I went, "Okay." Well, I start the fall at 11 o'clock on the Saturday night. 6:30 in the morning. I'm going, I've got a show today. This is insane. So I love the binge watching, but I rarely. But it's fun. It's great fun and wonderful, wonderful stories and wonderful acting. And I mean, it's just great. I saw a really good one last night, actually. Actually a very interesting one. You guys might enjoy this. It's called Look Who's Back.
Look Who's Back.
Look Who's Back.
It's German. It's a German movie, obviously an independent, German movie, and a bunch of kids are playing soccer. They're in Berlin. A bunch of kids are, in an urban setting, are playing soccer. There's a little park, tiny little park, and a guy wakes up,
mm-hmm.
and it's Hitler.
Look Who's Back.
It's very interesting what goes on for the next 2 hours.
This time, yes, he's keeping the secrets there, so we can watch it.
Yeah. Now it's funny and poignant and a little scary.
Fair enough. I mean, The Exorcist doesn't scare me as much as it used to, so I'm going to go for this.
That never scared me. You recently did a heartbreaking turn in Breaking Bad. I mean, you mentioned the great things that TV are doing for my money. One of the best things that was ever on TV, as far as I'm concerned. Did you watch that all the way through?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah, That was great. We're like Chris Farley now. Remember when you were in Breaking Bad? That was great.
John, were you like me when I would binge watch an episode or two, and it would leave such a bad taste in your mouth, the ending, that you would watch a third one to try to wash it out, but it didn't necessarily always do it. Were you like that too?
Was this for Breaking Bad?
Yes, for Breaking Bad.
The episodes would leave a bad taste in your mouth. And
so intense. So intense, emotional. So, oh my God, you felt what they were feeling.
Yeah, no, I know. There's a guy who I would see every once in a while at somebody's house, and I came in during the Breaking Bad period, those episodes I did, and I came in, and he had been a war correspondent.
Oh.
Mm.
And I walk in and he goes, hey, hi, and he jumps up and he comes to me. He goes, shit, man, shit. I watch half of the Breaking Bad shows, and then I have to turn it off, and then I have to go and walk around the block, and then I come back.
Oh, man. Or that's solidarity.
Thinking, wow.
Good to know. Thank you.
All right, listen, I got to get going.
Yeah, so do we.
It's
Great
been a
talking to
pleasure.
you, John Delancey from Hollywood, Q himself. Thank you so much for joining us, and thanks to all the listeners for joining us. And we will
Absolutely a pleasure. Absolutely. Thank you so much.
see you again Sunday.
It was fun.
Sunday at the regular time is 2 p.m. and it's David Silverman this week. So we will say goodbye to everybody. And
Thanks,
be right again
everyone.
with you. Bye bye.